Okay, so today we're diving into a topic that can be pretty stressful to think about.
Yeah.
Eviction.
Mm.
What happens if you get evicted from an apartment?
Right.
And here at the Deep Dive, we believe that understanding the process is honestly like
Absolutely.
the first step in protecting yourself.
It is.
As a tenant.
For sure. And we've gone through a ton of material for this one.
Yeah.
Legal briefings,
Yes.
FAQs for tenants, just trying to get
all the
all those resources in one place.
different angles.
Yeah, so we can have like a clear picture of what eviction really means.
Yeah, and it's important to emphasize right off the bat that it's not just like a landlord's, free pass to
yeah.
just kick someone out.
No. It's a very formal
There's a process.
legal process.
The legal pathway they have to follow.
That's right.
So our mission today is to equip you with the knowledge you need about eviction to feel informed and empowered.
Empowered, not overwhelmed.
Not overwhelmed, exactly. So let's just jump right into it.
Yeah, let's do it.
What does this eviction process look like step by step?
So the crucial thing to understand is it is, as we said, a very formal legal procedure.
Mm-hmm.
Your landlord can't just like show up and lock you out,
Right.
It's
not like in the movies.
No, not at all.
Yeah.
It almost always begins with a written notice of eviction.
Okay.
And that's like the landlord saying, hey,
Officially,
you need to either fix this problem
Right.
or leave.
And we're not talking about like a
Right.
casual text or
No.
an email.
This
It's
is
like official.
An official legal document.
Yeah. So what needs to be in this notice for it to be legit?
It has to be very specific.
Okay.
Okay?
Yeah.
It needs to state the reason why the landlord is evicting you.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe it's unpaid rent.
Right.
Maybe you violated the lease agreement in some way.
Okay.
Or maybe the lease term just ended.
Okay.
And this is really important. They have to give you a time frame.
Okay. Time frame for what?
A time frame to either resolve the issue.
Mm-hmm.
So like if it's unpaid rent, you have this much time to pay it.
Okay.
Or to vacate the premises.
Okay.
And this time frame, it's not universal.
Oh, interesting.
It actually varies depending on your local laws
Oh, wow.
and the reason for the eviction.
I see.
So in some of the stuff we read, it's like really emphasize it. You need to check your local ordinances.
Yeah, for sure.
Because it can be very different.
Local laws are so important with this kind of stuff.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. So let's say you get this notice.
Right.
And for whatever reason, the issue isn't resolved. You don't move out
Right.
within that time frame.
Okay.
What happens next?
So if it's not resolved, the landlord can escalate things legally.
Okay.
They can file what's called an unlawful detainer lawsuit with the court.
Okay.
And that's basically them asking the court to order you to leave.
So they're going to the judge and saying,
Yes.
hey,
This tenant's not.
this person needs to go.
Holding up their end of the bargain, they got to go.
Got it.
And when that happens, you as the tenant
Yeah.
are going to be served with a court summons.
Okay.
And this is a really important document because it legally requires you to respond to the court
Okay.
or appear in court on a specific date.
Got it.
So you can't just ignore this.
Don't ignore a court summons.
Definitely not.
Bad idea.
Bad idea. It can have some serious consequences.
Okay. So let's say you do respond
Okay.
or you show up in court.
Right.
What can you expect at that hearing?
So the court hearing is where both sides get to present their case to a judge.
Okay.
So the landlord will lay out their reasons for the eviction,
Right.
and you get to present your defense.
Okay.
So you might argue that you did pay the rent,
Mm-hmm.
or that the lease violation didn't happen,
Okay.
or that the landlord didn't follow the right procedures
Right.
when they gave you the notice.
Makes sense.
And it's important to note that the burden of proof usually lies with the landlord. They have to prove that the eviction is lawful.
Got it. So the judge listens to both sides and then makes a decision.
Yeah, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
And if the judge sides with the landlord,
Okay.
the court will issue an eviction order.
Okay.
And that basically says you have to leave by a certain date.
And that's serious stuff.
Oh, yeah. That's legally binding.
You got to follow that.
You have to follow that.
Okay. So even after the judge says you got to go,
Right.
if someone still doesn't leave,
Yeah.
is that it? Like, is that the end of it?
No, that is not the end of it.
Oh, boy.
If a tenant stays on the property after a court order,
Yeah.
law enforcement is going to get involved.
Right.
Usually the sheriff's department.
Makes sense.
And they're the ones who will actually physically remove the tenant and their things.
Wow.
Yeah.
So what happens to all your stuff in that situation?
That's a great question.
I mean,
And it really depends on local regulations.
oh, really?
Yeah. In some places, the law might say, okay, put it all on the street.
Oh.
Other places, they might say it has to be moved to storage.
Okay.
But a lot of the experts we watched emphasized that the cost of that storage
Yeah.
usually falls on the tenant.
Oh.
Yeah. It's another reason to try to resolve things before it gets to that point.
For sure. Okay, so we talked about how eviction works.
Right.
The steps involved.
Yeah.
Now let's talk about why.
Okay.
Like, what are the common reasons that this even happens in the first place?
So understanding those reasons is super helpful for tenants because then you can try to avoid them.
Right. Makes sense.
So the most common reason by far
Yeah.
is non-payment of rent.
Okay.
Basically not paying your rent on time and in full.
Like you agreed to.
Oh, it says in your lease.
Yeah.
That pretty much every legal briefing we looked at emphasized that that's the number one cause.
That's the big one.
Yeah.
Okay, so besides not paying rent, what else can get you in trouble?
Another big category is what they call major lease violations.
Okay.
And that's basically anything that goes against the terms of your lease.
So, like, what kind of things are we talking about?
So we saw examples like having pets when they're not allowed,
Right.
subletting your apartment without permission,
Okay.
or doing anything illegal on the property.
Right. So basically just following the rules that you agreed to.
Exactly. It's all spelled out in that lease agreement.
Makes sense. Okay, so what about when a lease just like runs out?
Yeah, that's another valid reason for a landlord to want you out.
Mm-hmm.
So if your lease has an end date
Okay.
and you don't sign a new one,
Right.
the landlord can generally ask you to leave,
I see.
even if you haven't done anything wrong.
It's just like the agreement's over.
Yeah, the rental period is over.
Okay. Are there any other reasons, like maybe related to the actual condition of the apartment?
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Okay.
So if you cause a lot of damage
Hmm.
beyond normal wear and tear
Right.
and you don't fix it,
Yeah.
that can be grounds for eviction.
Makes sense.
Also, if there are illegal activities happening in the apartment, or if you're not keeping it in a safe and livable condition,
Got it.
like ignoring health hazards or
So
something.
you got to keep things safe and legal.
Exactly.
Okay, so it's not all about money.
No,
It's about taking care of the place and following the rules.
that's right.
Okay, so let's talk about the consequences of eviction.
Okay.
Like, what kind of impact can this have on a tenant's life?
It can be a huge impact,
Mhm.
honestly.
Yeah.
One of the biggest things, and the one that lasts the longest,
Yeah.
is how hard it will be to find housing in the future.
Mm-hmm.
An eviction record is like a big red flag
Okay.
for most landlords.
I see.
They run background checks
Yeah?
through tenant screening companies.
Okay.
And those companies keep records of evictions.
Oh, wow.
So if you have an eviction on your record,
Yeah.
it's very likely that your rental application will be rejected,
Like, automatically?
almost
Oh,
automatically.
yeah.
And the worst part is
Uh,
those records can stay on your report for years.
so it's not like a
On
one-time thing?
It's like a shadow
Yeah.
that follows you.
Wow. Okay, so it's definitely a struggle to find a place.
It can be a huge struggle. Yeah.
Yeah. And what about the financial side of things?
But that's another area where it gets really rough.
Mm-hmm.
You're still on the hook for any unpaid rent,
Okay.
and your landlord can charge you late fees.
Right.
And if they take you to court and win,
Yeah.
you might have to pay their court costs and attorney fees.
So it's not just the rent.
No, it can really add up.
Wow.
And then all of that
Yeah.
can go to collections,
Oh, no.
which can tank your credit score.
Right.
And that makes it harder to get loans, credit cards.
It affects everything.
That can affect everything.
Wow. And then we also learned that the eviction case itself
Right.
becomes public record.
That's right. It's all public.
So that's
Anyone can see it.
not good.
Not good.
It can show up on background checks.
Exactly.
Wow. Okay, so we've talked about the consequences, which
Right.
are pretty serious. But let's shift gears a bit and talk about what you can do
Okay.
if you're facing eviction.
Right.
Like, are there any actions you can take?
Yes. Absolutely.
Yeah.
There are things you can do
Okay.
to try to make things better.
Okay, good.
First and foremost, talk to your landlord
Okay.
as soon as possible.
Like open communication.
Open and honest communication.
Got it.
See if you can work something out.
Like a compromise or?
Yeah, a compromise.
Okay.
If it's about unpaid rent,
Mm-hmm.
maybe you can set up a payment plan,
Okay.
or maybe you can agree to move out by a certain date,
Yeah.
and in return, the landlord won't file for eviction.
Okay.
So sometimes just talking things through can help everyone avoid a messy legal battle.
That makes sense. So communication is key.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay. What else?
It's also really important to get legal advice.
Mm-hmm.
If you think the eviction is unfair,
Yeah.
or if you think your landlord is doing something illegal,
Okay.
Or even if you're just not sure what your rights are, talk to a tenants' rights organization.
Got it.
Or a legal aid service.
So someone who knows the law.
Exactly.
Okay.
They can help you understand your options.
Okay. What if it seems like you're going to lose in court?
That's a tough situation.
Yeah.
But in that case, it might be better to move out voluntarily.
Really?
Yeah, before the whole legal process is over.
Why is that?
Because if you leave on your own terms,
Okay.
you might avoid having an official eviction judgment on your record,
I see.
which can make it a little bit easier to find housing later.
Okay, so even if you're going to have to leave,
Right.
it might be better to leave on your own.
Yeah, it can lessen the long-term impact.
Okay. That's a good tip.
Yeah.
So what happens when you're looking for a new place after an eviction?
Honestly is the best policy.
Okay.
Be upfront with potential landlords.
About the eviction?
Yeah, tell them what happened.
Okay.
Explain the circumstances and what you've done to make sure it won't happen again.
Right.
Some landlords might be understandable.
Especially if they can see that you learned from it.
Exactly.
Okay, so being transparent can help.
It can build trust.
Yeah. Okay, any other advice for finding a new place?
Yeah, definitely work on improving your credit score.
Sure.
If you have any outstanding debts, pay them off.
Makes sense.
And try to gather some positive references
Oh.
from past landlords who you had a good relationship with.
Right.
Or from employers or anyone who could vouch for you.
So it's like building a good case for yourself,
Exactly.
even though you have this eviction on your record.
That's right.
Okay, what about practical stuff like a cosigner or a bigger security deposit?
Those could be really helpful.
Mm.
If you have someone with good credit who's willing to co-sign your lease,
Okay.
that can reassure the landlord.
Right?
And offering a larger security deposit can also help.
Like a show of good faith, kind of.
Exactly.
Okay, so those are good things to keep in mind.
For sure.
Now, what about actually getting an eviction record removed?
Oh, that's tricky.
Yeah, is that even possible?
It's not easy.
All right.
And it really depends on the laws where you live
Mm-hmm.
and the details of your case.
Okay.
But there might be some things you could try.
Okay, like what?
Well, first, you want to pay off any debts related to the eviction.
Right.
Then you can ask the collection agencies and tenant screening companies to remove the record.
So like clearing your name, basically.
Yeah, you want to make sure your record is accurate too.
Mm-hmm.
And if there are any mistakes,
Yeah.
you can dispute them.
Okay.
And in some places,
Yeah.
you might be able to petition the court to have the record expunged or sealed.
Okay.
But that's usually pretty difficult.
Mm-hmm.
And you might need a lawyer's help.
So it's worth looking into, but it's not a guarantee.
Exactly.
Okay. And actually for our listeners, in certain parts of California,
Yeah.
you mentioned a resource.
Yeah, if you're in Orange County, Riverside, San Diego, or Los Angeles,
Mm-hmm.
the Martinez Law Center specializes in eviction defense
Okay.
for tenants.
That's good to know.
You can find more info at martinezlawcenter.com.
Okay, so that's martinezlawcenter.com.
Yep.
All right, so to wrap things up.
Yeah.
Eviction is a legal process with some pretty big consequences.
Yeah, it's not something to take lightly.
But tenants do have rights.
Absolutely.
And there are things they can do
For sure.
to protect themselves.
Right.
It's so important to understand the laws where you live.
Yeah. And to get legal help if you need it.
For sure. All right, so as we're thinking about all this,
Mm-hmm.
it really makes you think about the bigger picture, right? Like,
Yeah.
what can we do as a society
Right.
to help people who are facing housing insecurity?
Yeah, that's a huge question.
Yeah, and to maybe prevent evictions from happening in the first place.
Absolutely.
It's a complex issue,
It is.
but definitely worth thinking about.
Definitely.
All right, well, that's our deep dive for today.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for joining us.
Of course.
And we'll see you next time.
Call now 714-442-9741. Thank you.